Welcome to Personal Development Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Agi Keramidas, and today we are celebrating an incredible milestone, episode 500 of the podcast. In these 500 episodes over 5 years, I've had the honor of speaking with thought leaders, authors, spiritual teachers, entrepreneurs, and remarkable people from around the world. It's a journey that has personally transformed me and continues to do so, but even more meaningfully, it has touched the lives of you, the listener. And I'm truly grateful and excited to have reached episode 500. What a milestone. I'm delighted to be sharing this with you today. There is a story I've heard that I've come to appreciate more over time, and it feels particularly relevant as I am recording this. Many years ago, a man decided to build a stone wall behind his house. He wasn't a builder, just someone who had an idea and wanted to create something. So he made a commitment to place a stone every day. So some days it was easy. The sun was out, his energy was high, the mortar was mixed just right. Other days it rained, his body was sore, the stones, didn't quite sit the way he wanted them to, but still, despite all that, he continued to place one stone a day. After a while, the wall began to take shape. At 100 stones, it was just a curiosity. At 300 stones, people started to notice. At 400 stones, they asked him how he kept going. After a few years, it wasn't just a wall. It had become something others could lean on. And the day he laid the 500th stone, the man stepped back and realized it wasn't just a wall anymore. It was a piece of him, his intention, his discipline, his values. And he realized that more important than what he had just built was who he had become in the process. This story resonates with me because this podcast has been built one episode at a time, one meaningful conversation, one insight, one intention at a time. And now at episode 500, I realize this isn't just a podcast anymore. It's a part of me, and it is something you who are listening right now can lean on, learn from, and grow. And so to mark this moment today, not just as a milestone, but as a reflection of what's been built, I would like to revisit a few of the stones that truly shaped this wall, sort of speech. So, out of 500 episodes, we will revisit 5 key insights. No more, just 5. These insights come from 5 standout episodes that have consistently resonated with you. My fellow mastery seeker, these aren't just 5 powerful interviews. These are 5 of the most downloaded and shared conversations out of all 500 episodes. These are 5 insights that have left their mark on this podcast. So join me as we revisit these powerful moments And let's start with the first one. And the first one comes from the all-time most downloaded episode of the podcast. And the insight is about gratitude. When Andrew Kapp first joined me back in episode 67, he shared a perspective on gratitude that stood out, not just because of what he said, but how he said it. Gratitude for Andrew isn't a checklist item. It's not just about listing things you're thinking for. It is a tool for changing your emotional state. It's a shift in energy. He said, there's nothing to lose and everything to gain by engaging in a process of gratitude and then seeing for yourself what happens. In other words, gratitude isn't about performance, it's about presence. It's about triggering a different frequency in ourselves, not proving that you're a positive person. And when Andrew returned to the podcast a couple of years later in episode 312, he took this insight even further. He highlighted the feeling, not just the act of gratitude. And he said, feeling good is not like a hammer that you swing to shatter your problems. It's more like a paintbrush that you gently stroke, blending answers and solutions into your life so that your challenges fade. I think that metaphor is powerful. Gratitude isn't a tool meant to overpower or force your way through problems. It is a gentle practice, a creative act. And when you begin to use gratitude this way, it stops being a routine and it becomes a resource. So from gratitude as an energetic shift, let's move on to something just as foundational, our values. Because once we are attuned to how we feel, the next question is, what truly matters to me? And no one has unpacked that more clearly than Dr. John DeMartini in episode 190, where the second insight comes from. Dr. DeMartini's work around human behavior and value systems is transformative. In our conversation, one of the themes he spoke about was living in alignment with your highest values. And he said that people make decisions based on their own values, not ours. And we make decisions based on our values, not theirs. And he said, if we compare ourselves to others, we're not going to compare our daily actions to our own highest values. I will repeat this to sink in. Compare our daily actions to our own highest values. This core message about living congruently with our values is a call to clarity. Many of us chase success, happiness, or approval, but real transformation comes when we align our decisions, our habits, our goals, and our daily actions with what matters most to us personally. It's not about doing more, it's about doing what truly reflects who we are. By the way, you will find links to this and all 5 episodes in the show notes. And so, If values define our direction, perception defines our altitude. Because even if we are aligned with what matters to us, we still bump up against what we believe is possible. And that's where the next insight comes in, from Victoria Rader in episode 288, one of the most downloaded in the podcast history. That conversation took us into the world of perception and energy, but in a grounded, applicable way. Victoria spoke with passion and precision about how our internal worldview literally creates the limits of what we can receive in life. She said, "You cannot out-imagine perception. You can only feel and imagine what you already perceive." And she added, "We first perceive to receive so that we can imagine to send it out." What a profound shift that creates, because before we can expand, we must first upgrade our perception of what's possible. If you see yourself as small, underqualified, or unworthy, that belief will set your ceiling. This insight reminds us that personal development isn't about adding skills. It's about transforming the lens through which we experience life. So far, we have explored gratitude, values, and perception. But personal mastery isn't just internal. It also shows up in how we communicate. And that brings us to our fourth insight from a refreshing, practical voice. Communication coach Brendan Kumarasamy brought a different kind of wisdom, one rooted in confidence, playfulness, and practice. He said something in episode 292 that became one of the podcast's most quoted lines. He said, "If you can make sense out of nonsense, you can make sense out of anything." This isn't just clever, it is liberating. Brendan's approach is about removing the pressure of perfection. He encourages us to practice speaking about silly things, like in his example describing avocados, just to stretch our confidence muscle. And when we do that, when we practice it over time, we become more fluent, more present, and more powerful in real conversations. It is a perfect example of how play leads to mastery. So far, we've talked about skills, perception, values, gratitude, all tools for growth. But sometimes transformation doesn't come from any of this. Sometimes it comes from tuning inwards to intuition, to symbols, to unseen layers of reality. And that brings us to our fifth and final insight from a conversation that brought a more mystical dimension to the podcast. The episode 388 with Hope Fitzgerald about the infinity wave was one that clearly resonated with listeners in a big way. She explored how symbolic intention can shift your emotional state and even your reality. She said, and I will quote her verbatim here, "If I want to change my reality, I'm going to use this symbol in my mind's eye to imprint upon the situation. It shifts the situation into a much higher state. This is more than just visualization. This is about using energetic tools that can bypass the dense reality, shall we say, and trigger change in that way. Hope Fitzgerald's message reminds us that we are not passive observers of life, we are co-creators. And with clarity, intention, and inner focus, we can change our energetic frequency. And with that, we can change our circumstances, our reality. And with that final insight, we come full circle back to the heart of why this podcast exists. Looking back on these 500 episodes, I feel immense gratitude. Not just for the opportunity to speak with remarkable people, but for the trust and attention of every person who has listened, shared, and applied what they've heard. These 5 moments we explored today are more than quotes. They are invitations, tools, turning points, if you wish. So, regardless of where you are in your personal development journey, I hope these lessons help you feel more aligned and more empowered. And as I look ahead, the next chapter of this podcast will bring even more stories, tools, and voices. And I warmly invite you to walk that path with me. My final comment regarding reaching 500 episodes is this is just the beginning. It's my promise and commitment to you. Until next time, keep believing in yourself, keep growing, and as always, stand out, don't fit in,